This video is a continuation of Comenius, Plants, Part 1b, Trees. Gemma hians vel dehiscens florem, in quo apex id est stamen, sed in fico grossulum protrudit. Flos fructum, qui ubi poste a maturescet, carpitur, aut decutitur, aut per se decadet fracescens. Ho ophthalmos e ho blastos cascon, anthos, en hoi croce, pue, suce eri non. To anthos carpo toce, carpos de peperos, e drepetai, e aposeatai, e sapros automatos es gen catapipte. This is a fundamental sentence. Let's look a little closer at some of its words. You already know from your study of rocks and metals that gemma is a gem. In Pliny and Virgil, gemma is a leaf bud, especially in the context of plant propagation. For example, in the second Georgics, Virgil celebrates the manifold ways for rearing trees. Principe arboribus vara est natura creandis. For example, bud grafting. Nec modus inserer aut oculos imponere simplex. Nor is the mode of grafting and of budding the same. Nam qua se medio trudunt de cortice gemmae, for where the buds push out from amid the bark, et tenuis rumpunt tunicas, and burst their tender sheaths, that's the gemmae dehiscentes, angustus in ipso fit nodosinus, a narrow split is made just in the node. Huc alle ein ex arbore germen includunt udoque docent in olescere libro. In this slit from an alien tree they insert a bud and teach it to grow in the sappy bark. Notice, by the way, that oculus, gemma, nodus, and germen are all synonyms for bud. Never has science and poetry been so beautifully combined. Virgil was familiar with Theophrastus, who also had several words for buds, including the one selected by our translator, ophthalmos. If you've watched our videos on Theophrastus, you know he discusses in Book 1 the differences among trees in their parts. One part he calls osdos, which means branch in general, but in Theophrastus's context has the more precise meaning of a node on a stem and the bough starting from it. Theophrastus makes the point that the spaces between these nodes or osdoi, that is, the internodes, are short on young trees, giving their branches a bumpy surface. He gives several examples, including the vine. Hosgar osdos in tois alois, huto kai ophthalmos in ampeloi, kai in calamoi gonu. For what we call the osdos in the other trees, we call the eye or ophthalmos in the vine, and the joint or gonu in the reed. Gemma, node, internode, dehiscence, these have all become technical terms in botany today, though gemma has taken on a very specialized meaning, and the gemma of Pliny and Virgil we call by the non-Latinate name bud. This is similar to the history of the Latin word cortex, which classically meant the outer skin of a tree, which we now call by the non-Latinate word bark, relegating the term cortex to a specialized meaning in the anatomical study of wood. The stamen in a flower consists of an anther atop a filament. Comenius uses apex and stamen for one or the other of these, or their combination. We can't be exactly sure which, since it was only in Comenius's time that botanists were beginning to accurately distinguish and name these minuscule floral parts. They were using Latin words they got from Pliny. but neither Pliny nor the Greeks and Romans in general had fixed words for the parts of flowers. Here, for example, is how Pliny describes the birth and growth of the rose. Rosa germinat omnis, primo inclusa granoso cortice. Every rose, that is, every rose bud, appears at first enclosed in a granular shell, by which is meant what we call the flower's receptacle or torus. Quo mox intumescent et in virides alabastros fastigato, and when this presently swells and slopes itself into a green cone like a perfume box, the lack of scientific terminology results in some odd comparisons, paulatum rubescens dehiscet accesse pandit in calicem medio sui stantes complexum luteos apices. Gradually reddening, the rose splits and spreads out into a cup. Calyx eventually became our term for the whorl of sepals on a flower, which cup encloses the yellow points that stand out of its center. The yellow points, the luteos apices, in this instance appear to be the anthers of the stamen. On one occasion, in his description of the Lilium candidum, Pliny does use stamen to mean our stamen, filament plus anther, although the text is in doubt. In any case, his usage of these terms is not systematic. Lilium rosae nobilitate proximest, candor eius eximius. The lily holds the next highest rank after the rose. The flower is of an exceeding whiteness. Resupinis per ambitum labris tenuique pillo et stamene stantibus in medio crocis. With the lips, that is, the petals, for which there was still no word, bending backwards all around, and the slender hair, meaning the pistil, and stamen, the color of saffron, standing upright in the center. The best-known botanists from the period of Comenius's youth, such as Rombert Dodoens and Charles de l'Écluse or Carolus Clusius, were using phrases like sex alba stamina, flavis apicibus praedita, 6 white threads provided with yellow tips, where stamen clearly means the filament and apex the anther. The primary meaning of Greek stamon, Latin stamen, is the warp in an upright loom. Accordingly, to translate apex or stamen, Comenius's Greek translator has simply utilized the word for woof thread, kroke. This was not a botanical term in Greek. In fact, you may remember from our Praefatio on Theophrastus and the flower that Theophrastus referred to the flower's sex organs simply as a flower within the flower, heteron anthos intoi ante. Again, if you saw our Praefationes on Theophrastus, you know that the Greeks and Romans thought of the fig as an anomaly, a fruit that grew without a flower. Comenius reflects that same understanding. Gemma in fico non florem sed grossulum protrudit. In classical Latin, grossus, diminutive grossulus, meant unripe fig. For example, in this sentence by the Roman writer on agriculture and on trees, Lucius Junius Moderatus Columella, whose writings Comenius was probably familiar with, at si voles ficum quamvis non natura seram facere, if on the other hand you wish to make a fig tree bear late fruit, which it does not naturally do, grossulos preoremque fructum decutato, ita alterum edet, quem inhiemem differet. Shake down the unripe or early fruit, and the tree will then produce another crop which it will defer to the winter. Besides the fig, the other ubiquitous fruit in the Mediterranean in antiquity was, of course, the olive. The verb Comenius chooses for rotting, spoiling, fracesco, in fact comes from fraces, which are the fragments of pulp left after pressing the olive. The Romans didn't have specific words for many of the floral parts, but for something as economically important as the olive, their language was very specific. They distinguished the pulp, or fraques, from the watery residue, amurca, as in this bit of advice from Cato the Elder in his De Agricultura. Olea quae diu fuerit in terra aut in tabulato, inde olei minus fiet et deterius. Olives, which have been long on the ground or the floor, will yield less oil and of a poorer quality. Oleum, si poteris, bis in dee depleto. If possible, draw off the oil twice a day. Nam oleum quam deutissime in amurc et in fracibus erit, tam deterrimum erit. For the longer the oil remains in the watery residue and the dregs, the worse the quality will be. The title of this chapter in the Janua is De Arboribus et Fructibus. Let us pluck one more piece of fruit from this sentence. Flos fructum. That's about as much biology as we're going to get from Comenius. He tells us of the stamen, but nothing of the gynecium, the female floral parts. But we will learn about different types of fruits from Comenius, and to prepare, let's keep in mind the modern botanical definition of fruit is taken from the second edition of Plant Systematics by Michael G. Simpson. Fruit is the mature ovary of flowering plants. It consists of the pericarp, which is the mature ovary wall, and seeds. The pericarp is sometimes divisible into exocarp, mesocarp, and endocarp. But the fruit may contain tissue from non-ovarian parts that are called accessory parts. Such a fruit is called an accessory fruit. For example, the ovary or core of the apple and its pericarp is surrounded by a thick, fleshy hypanthium that is mostly the part of the apple we eat. The hypanthium is a fusion of tissue from the sepals and petals. Hold this thought until we get to the different types of fruit. Quidam fructus sunt praecoces, alai serotini, vel cordi, quidam perennes, ut juniperus. Eduntur autem, vel recentes, vel veeti, vel fracadi. Aservantur in oporotheca et oporofulacio. It sometimes happens we only know about a Greek word from a Roman author. We know about oporotheke from Marcus Terentius Varro's Rerum Rusticarum. This is written in dialogue form, and the speakers say of Gnaeus Tremelius Scrofa as he approaches them, De agricultura Romanus peritissimus existimatur. He is considered the Roman most skilled in agriculture. Fundi enim eius, propter culturam, iucundiore spectaculos sunt multis quam regie polita aedificia aliorum. For his estates, because of their high cultivation, are a more pleasing sight to many than the country seats of others that are furnished in a princely style. Cum huius spectatum veniant villas, non ut apud loculum, ut videant pinacothecas, sed oporothecas. When people come to inspect his farmsteads, it is not to see collections of pictures, as at Lucullus's, but collections of fruit. And a little later, Varro gives us a tip on how best to construct these fruit houses. Et ideo oporothecas qui faceunt ad aquilonum ut fenestras habeant, atque ut ei perflentur curant. For this reason, namely to construct a place that is cool and dry, those who build fruit houses are careful to let them have windows facing the north and open to the wind. Ton carpon aloi proi carpusi, aloi opsi carpusi, aloi eni auto por usi, hoion arcathos. Estiontai de e neoi, e par etoi, e saproi. In oporotheke teruntai. The Romans borrowed many things from the Greeks that made life pleasurable, but they were sometimes ambivalent about it. See this one last thing Varro tells us about the oporotheca in the life of Roman aristocrats. The Romans of old, he says, used to only go to the city on market day, otherwise they stayed behind at their farms to work them. Quod dum servaverunt institutum, utrumque sunt consecuti, ut et cultura agros fecundissimos haberent, et ipsi valetudine firme ores essent, ac ne Graecorum urbana desiderarent cumnasia. So long as they kept up this practice, they attained both objects, keeping their lands most productive by cultivation, and themselves enjoying better health, and not requiring the citified gymnasia of the Greeks. Quae nunc vix satis singula sunt, nec putant se habere villam, si non multis vocabulis retineat Graecis, cum vocent particulatem loca procoitona, palaestrum, apoduterion, peristilon, ornithona, per iteron, oporotheken. In these days, one such gymnasium is hardly enough, and they do not think that they have a real villa unless it rings with many resounding Greek names. Places severally called prokoition, anteroom, palaestra, exercise room, apoduterion, dressing room, peristilon, colonnade, ornithon, aviary, peripteros, pergola, oporotheca, fruit rooms. Carassa oblongis petiolis pendent, apronaana breve usculis, ta cerasia epimacron miscon, ta aproniana brachiuteron crematae e ertatae. We learn from Pliny that the cherry tree was imported into Italy from Pontus, that is the Black Sea, by the Roman general Lucius Lucullus after his defeat of Mithridates in 74 BCE. He says it became widespread in Western Europe, and of all the varieties, the Apronian cherries were the reddest, Cerassorum aproniana maxime rubent. By Gaspar Bohan and Comenius' day, there was a huge variety of cherries, increasing daily due to cultivation and breeding. Among their distinguishing differences, Bohan says, alia pediculo longiore, alia breviore. But let's get our petioles, our peduncles, our pedicels, and our petiolus straight. These things were all called pediculi by Pliny, little feet. Bohan also uses pediculus, but Comenius went for petiolus. In today's usage, petiolus is the leaf stalk, pedunculus the fruit stalk. Your choice. And please proceed to the next video that continues Plants, Trees, Part 1b.